Okay, so picking up on our study of Revelation chapter 8, we're starting with verse 3. Another angel came and stood at the altar, holding a golden censer, and much incense was given to him, so that he might add it to the prayers of all the saints on the golden altar, which was before the throne. And the smoke of the incense, with the prayers of the saints, went up before God out of the angel's hand. Now, we had the seven angels with the seven trumpets, and now we got an eighth angel coming up on the scene here. And we know that the tabernacle and the temple that would have existed in Jesus' day, and then before that with the first temple in Solomon's day, these are merely patterns of the real ones in heaven. I think we're getting a glimpse here of the real tabernacle and temple in heaven, and the altar being in heaven, which we also saw from Revelation chapter 4 and following, as the seven scroll seal was being unsealed. The seals were being broken. And so we can look at the book of Hebrews, which is all about how Christ's sacrifice was a once-and-for-all sacrifice, and therefore there was no need for the Jews, the Hebrews, to continue the animal sacrifices and the ceremonial sacrifices that were taking place there in the temple before Titus and the Roman legion destroyed it in AD 70. Let's look at Hebrews 9. Therefore, it was necessary for the copies of the things in the heavens to be cleansed with these, the animal sacrifices, but the heavenly things themselves with better sacrifices than these. For Christ did not enter a holy place made with hands, a mere copy of the true one, but into heaven itself, now to appear in the presence of God for us. So Jesus was not sacrificed in the temple. He was sacrificed outside the city, as we know. And so the reference here is that the ultimate sacrifice was done in heaven, because that's where the ultimate temple and the ultimate tabernacle, the ultimate altar, and so on. Now I want to call your attention to this. Remember the prayers of the martyrs? The martyrs were under the altar. And here we see an angel gathering fire from the altar. The martyrs were under the altar in Revelation 6. When the Lamb broke the fifth seal, I saw underneath the altar the souls of those who had been slain because of the word of God and because of the testimony which they had maintained. And they cried out with a loud voice, saying, "How long, O Lord, holy and true, will you refrain from judging and avenging our blood on those who dwell on the earth dwellers, the unregenerate?" And there was given to each of them a white robe. And they were told they should rest for a little while longer, until the number of their fellow servants and their brethren who were to be killed, even as they had been, would be completed also. So they're told to relax and wait, maybe not relax in so many terms, but they're told to wait, certainly, until the rest of the martyrs are brought in to the fold, so to speak, and have suffered their death because of their stand for Jesus. So this eighth angel is beginning the process, I believe, of answering the cry of the martyrs, the prayers of the martyrs. It's rising up like incense from the altar. The prayers of the martyrs that are crying out for God's vengeance. We're going to start to see that occur with these seven trumpets leading up to the seven bowls, at the end of which God's wrath is complete. Verse 5. Then the angel took the censer and filled it with the fire of the altar and threw it to the earth. And there followed peals of thunder and sounds and flashes of lightning and an earthquake. And the seven angels who had the seven trumpets prepared themselves to sound them. So the first four trumpets that we're going to read about in this chapter, they're often referred to as the judgment of the thirds, because we're going to see a third of creation that is going to be damaged or destroyed, the earth, the sea, the rivers, and the heavens, with these first four trumpets. Now, if you remember back from chapter 7, the last chapter we looked at, with 144,000 Jews, there are four angels referenced that had power to harm the earth and the sea, and they were held back and told not to damage the earth and the sea until the 144,000 from the 12 tribes of Israel were sealed. So I'm speculating that this is going to be the same four angels, because these four angels specifically have the power to damage the earth and the sea by the blowing of these first four trumpets. At any rate, verse 7, the first sounded, and there came hail and fire mixed with blood, and they were thrown to the earth. And a third of the earth was burned up, and a third of the trees were burned up, and all the green grass was burned up. So this sounds very similar. Again, these echoes of the Old Testament sounds very similar to that seventh plague of hail and fire from Exodus chapter 9. I encourage you to go back and look that up. Verse 8, the second angel sounded, and something like a great mountain burning with fire was thrown into the sea, and a third of the sea became blood, and a third of the creatures which were in the sea and had life died, and a third of the ships were destroyed. Now again, talking about this water turning to blood, sounds an awful lot like the plagues in Exodus, doesn't it? Exodus chapter 7. The oceans comprise geographically about 3/4 of the Earth's surface, and if you can imagine the size of the Atlantic Ocean, that accounts for about 1/3 of the surface area of the sea. So that gives you an idea of the magnitude of this destruction, of this judgment that's being placed on a third of the seas. Now, verse 10, the third angel sounded, and a great star fell from heaven, burning like a torch, and it fell on a third of the rivers and on the springs of water. So this is a judgment on fresh water. The name of the star, we know the name of the star, and we also know that stars are idioms for angels, both good angels and fallen angels. The name of the star is called wormwood, and a third of the waters became wormwood, and many men died from the waters because they were made bitter. The waters, not the men. So look at Jeremiah chapter 9. Who is the wise man that may understand this? And who is he to whom the mouth of the Lord has spoken, that he may declare it? Why is the land ruined, laid waste like a desert, so that no one passes through? The Lord said, because they have forsaken my law, which I set before them, and have not obeyed my voice, nor walked according to it, but have walked after the stubbornness of their heart, and after the Baals, as their fathers taught them. Therefore, thus says the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, behold, I will feed them, this people, with wormwood. It's that same word. And give them poisoned water to drink. I think we're seeing in this Revelation chapter 8 with the first four trumpets, we're seeing a fulfillment of this prophecy from Jeremiah. I will scatter them among the nations, whom neither they nor their fathers have known, and I will send the sword after them until I have annihilated them. And if it's not a specific fulfillment of this prophecy, there are certain echoes of this prophecy taking place in these trumpet judgments. Now, this idea of wormwood, I just throw this in as a little factoid I thought was interesting. C.S. Lewis wrote the book Screw Tape Letters, and in the Screw Tape Letters, there's a senior demon who goes by the name Screwtape, who's sending a series of letters to his nephew, who's a lower-ranking demon named Wormwood, telling him what he needs to do to deceive people and, counteract God's plan and all that. But I find it interesting that C.S. Lewis used the name Wormwood here. Now, get this. Now, when I first heard this, I thought, that just can't be true. That's just too bizarre. But I did my research on it to see, and it turns out, apparently, this is true. The Russian word for wormwood is, in fact, Chernobyl, which we know is the site of that famous nuclear disaster there in the past in Europe. I think it was Ukraine, if I'm not mistaken. Now, wormwood could be a star, such as an asteroid. I mean, the word asteroid, it comes aster as a derivation of aster. It means something that's star-like. It could be an asteroid. It could be a meteorite. It could be something, actually, a heavenly body that is falling to planet Earth and causing this. That's very possible. It could be a fallen angel. It could be both, and it may very likely be both. Now, you may have heard of, and depending on when you're watching this video, but you may have heard of this near-Earth object called Apophis that supposedly is on its way toward planet Earth. Again, we're in 2025. It is predicted to make a near pass-by in the year 2029. April 13th, which happens to be a Friday the 13th of that year. Now, originally, NASA was calling for an impact. They have since revised that and are saying, no, there's this huge asteroid out there, but it's just going to make a close pass by. It's not going to actually make an impact. An impact would be devastating. But I've also read from the NASA site that they're predicting it to come within the orbits of our geosynchronous satellites. So that is a really, really close pass by. I hope they're accurate in their predictions here. I don't know that I have confidence in them. Some people say NASA stands for never a straight answer. I don't know about that. But at any rate, this is out there. And I think it's at least worth mentioning. It's something that we need to be aware of and watching. This potential impact, potential pass-by of this object that is known as Apophis. There are many others that have studied this that are fearful that it is, in fact, going to make landfall, so to speak, here on planet Earth. That's supposedly a picture of it. It could be a computer-generated graphic, but that was off the NASA website, I believe. It's interesting. I don't know who comes up with these names. I don't know who NASA has in charge of naming these, these various objects that are out there. But Apophis is actually the name of the Greek serpent god. How about that? Of ancient Egyptian mythology. And what is he associated with? Earthquakes, thunders, darkness, storms, death. He's depicted as being the enemy and opposition to light, order, and truth. That sounds very familiar, particularly based on what we just read. The NASA is, in this current time period, this current year, is planning to send a probe to investigate Apophis, and the name of the probe is Osiris Apex. It was originally called Osiris Rex, but it's an acronym for Origins, Spectral Interpretation, Resource Identification, and Security-Apophis Explorer. That is a mouthful, but who comes up with these names? Because Osiris is the ancient Egyptian god that's associated with Nimrod. And Nimrod takes us all the way back to the book of Genesis and the Tower of Babel, because he's the founder of Babel, which later became Babylon, and all of the world's occultic practices, or pretty much all of them, can be traced back to Babylon. And we know that the city of Babylon, and we'll see when we get into our study of chapter 17 and 18, we'll have a discussion about whether it's the actual city of Babylon or this is something metaphorical for some other city. And I'll tell you where I fall out on that when we get to chapter 17 and 18. But the city of Babylon is going to figure predominantly in our end time studies here. There could be, this passage could be a reference to the fallen angel Satan. Of course, when we get to chapter 12, which is coming up, we're going to see Satan being referred to as the great dragon, and the serpent of old is going to be thrown down to earth along with his angels, and he's going to go after Israel originally, and then we can't get Israel because Israel's protected. He's going to go after the Christians, and that's going to be a very dramatic thing that we're going to see unfold when we get there into our study of Revelation chapter 12. So I throw all that out there just to say, I don't know what this thing, this star wormwood is all about, but we need to be watching closely and praying. When we get on the other side of our break, we're going to look take a more deep look at this great serpent, this adversary of ours known as Satan or the dragon.